So when I joined Willow 4 years ago, Bill told me in a meeting, he said, hey, I will help you grow as a teacher the best that I know how to. But you have to find other coaches and other mentors. And so I got on the phone, I started reaching out to different pastors across the country, and I said, hey, who do you turn to help you grow as a communicator? And every one of them said the same name, Ken Davis. And Ken, over the past few years, has become a dear friend, an incredible mentor. He will watch my talks, and then he just screams at me. It's awesome. But literally, he has been such a kind, an amazing voice to help me grow, and he's doing it for so many people across the country. And I'm so thrilled to share and have him here once again. Can we give a huge Willow welcome to my friend and mentor, Ken Davis.
Thanks, man. Good morning. This feels so much like coming home. Over the years, I've been here, I think close to a dozen times, and every time you receive me with such graciousness, you understand my weirdness, and you understand my heart for God. So thank you for allowing me to be with you this morning. I have never been a baseball fan, until very recently. I made the mistake of watching Game 5 of the Cubs. And I was absolutely enthralled. I was watching a game that I was certain that the Cubs would lose. And they won Game 5. And so I was drawn into Game 6. And I watched Game 6. And I'm 70 years old. I go to bed at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But Game 7 came on, and it lasted until almost midnight. And I want to tell you that I not only have become a fan of baseball, but for the rest of my life, I am a Cubs fan. And I'm not saying that just because I'm here. I watched on television as a baseball was thrown from third base to first base, and the second that ball hit the glove of the first baseman, the world vibrated with joy. I watched as television covered these amazing celebrations and parties that you had here because someone threw a ball from third base to first base and it was caught. Now, I'm not diminishing the joy of that at all. But this morning, I am here to talk to you about a joy that a goat can't destroy. A reason for joy. I'm, in fact, going to give you 3 reasons that we can expect to experience joy no matter what our circumstances are. We live in unusual times. There is not a lot of joy. There's not a lot of people that find it easy to smile or to laugh. There's many people living in very difficult, fearful situations. Across the world, we see all kinds of trouble. In our own country, we see divisions. Is there reasons for joy in the midst of that? And today I'm here to tell you, yes, I believe there are. And I'm going to give you 3 of them. Here is the very first. If we know this, if we believe this, it changes everything. God is the author of joy. He is the one who created it. Now, your applause is appreciated, but the truth of the matter is that church history hasn't always shown this to be true. How many of you grew up like I did, believing that if it was fun, there had to be something wrong with it? If there was laughter, you certainly had to raise an eyebrow. You can't imagine what that did for me, being a person that God created with a strange, weird mind. My idea of a great Saturday morning is to ride my motorcycle down to the highway near our home and sit on the edge of the highway on my motorcycle with my wife's hairdryer and point that at cars as they go by. I love the smell of burning rubber, and I'm telling you, if you point if you point at it, cars as they go by, they slam on the brakes and you can stay there. It really confuses people because I drive a little pink moped motorcycle. You see, the definition of confusion for a man is to be chased by what he thinks is a policeman on a pink moped. A man can't wrap his brain around that. There's no response to that. Women have no problem with that. I'm going, what should I do? You think he's really a policeman? Well, what should I do? You women just go, he's on a moped, stupid, step on it. So I am so grateful that Willow accepts my approach, the way I look at the world, and understands my heart like you do, and allows me to be here and proclaim that God is the author of joy. Growing up like I did, I believed that because there was that question about if it's fun, it's got to be wrong. I thought God's whole job was to stand up in heaven somewhere, and he would go, behold. No, I don't. I knew he stood like that because I'd seen the pictures. Ken Davis have his fun. No. Are there any other people that grew up like that? That somehow that we couldn't talk about God with a smile on our face. We couldn't, that somehow it took away from his holiness. I'm here to tell you that God is the author of joy. If you don't believe that, think of how the deceiver, the one that hates God and hates joy, tries to take it out of this day, Sunday. How many of you have ever found yourself on Sunday, God's day, destroyed by tension in the home? How many of you have found yourself on Sunday with your hands around the throat of a child you love very much, saying something like, you get ready for church, you get ready now so we can get there on time to learn about the love of Jesus, so help me. Can I see your hands, please? I see those hands in the balcony. Thank you. Your buses will wait. God bless you. We'll open the altars. That is the deceiver trying to take joy from us. You ever, on the way to church, where you want your kids to learn about the love and joy of Christ, give them the Sunday morning look of love in the rearview mirror? Tell me you've never done that. They sit in the back seat. On the way to church, children become demon-possessed, I'm telling you. Fighting over stuff that makes no sense whatsoever. This is my side of the car. Dad, she is breathing on my side of the car. You ever hear this? She's looking at me. There is no answer to she's looking at me. There's nothing that destroys brain cells. No wonder most of us walk around with brain damage. She's looking at me. I thought I was an expert. I thought I know how to fix that. I'll put them to shame. This shows you, we're going to talk later about this. I haven't got all the answers, but I'd written a best-selling book on parenting, so I thought I'll just put them to shame. I said, yeah, why don't you just poke her eyes out then? That is the wrong answer. I look back there, and the one child had her hand over her eyes. You ever grab the rearview mirror and dislocate your shoulder trying to separate them back there? That is the deceiver's work to try to get us not to enjoy what happens on Sunday. I spoke about this in the previous service. I probably had a half a dozen married couples come and tell me about the argument they had before they got here to church this morning. God is the author of joy. 1 Peter 3:15 says this, but in your hearts revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to anyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect. Tell me, folks, what does our face show about our joy? This is why I reject this whole idea that we can't show joy. I believe that people should be breaking down the doors of Willow Creek and every church in the country to find out what the celebration is all about. They ought to be breaking down the doors to our homes to find out what the celebration is about. Joy, laughter does not belong to someone else. It doesn't belong to a sitcom. It belongs to God. And somewhere along the line, very well-meaning people decided that things like joy and laughter and dance and theater don't belong anywhere near the church. They belong to the devil. He can have them. He's had them for hundreds of years. It's time we take them back because God is the author of joy. People will only ask you about your reason for hope if you have a face that reflects hope and joy. The time is long past, and especially in the mood we have in our country now, when you can proclaim the good news of Jesus with a face that looks like you swallowed a profusely sweating toad. It ain't gonna happen. I've been a Christian for 27 years. And that's been great. I want to say you need to send some missionaries to your face because your face has not yet received the good news. We have an entire generation of young people searching for joy. I want to say this. I don't think there has ever been a time in history when our country, when our young people, when a new generation desperately wants to know real joy. Because we've searched for it in so many places. A certain political party is not the author of joy. The possessions that we own are not the author of joy. Security, financial security, it's wonderful, but it's not the author of joy. In the midst of my success, in the midst of my success as a ministry person, in the midst of a successful financial life, I lost my joy. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second. But this is the time. I encourage you to leave your children with a legacy of joy. I don't know how much longer time I have left on this earth. I just celebrated my 70th birthday. My daughter Tracy, 40 years old, stood up and as a tribute said, "Thank you, Dad, for the laughter that reverberated through our home." And when they do my memorial service, I hope my kids are in a room somewhere, unable to breathe, remembering some of those moments. Helping them deal with grief, and grief that does not overcome the joy that God has waiting for us. God is the author of joy. Someone defined humor this way. Someone said, humor is a gentle way to acknowledge human frailty. It's a way of saying, I'm not okay, you're not okay, but that's okay. That leads us to my second reason for joy. You ready for this? And this is scriptural. Perfection is not a requirement. You don't have to be perfect. I can't even guess at the number of people in this room who are bruised and battered because they beat themselves up every single day. I can only guess because I have to struggle with it on a constant basis. Perfection is not a requirement. I have said this, I will believe it until the day I die. Nothing harms a marriage, nothing harms friendships, nothing harms our relationship with God more than trying to perpetuate the perception of perfection. Trying to pretend that we have it all together. It does two things to us. First of all, I am a perfectionist, by the way. Do you know what that means? I'm miserable most of the time. Because I demand perfection from myself. I'm an artist. I have paintings that have never been painted because they aren't perfect. I'm going to tell you from the depths of my heart, I came here terrified because I love you people so much, afraid that this message might not be perfect. And that's a hurtful thing, to be able to say, Lord, here I am with all my flaws, use me. It hurts us in that way. The other way it hurts us is if we pretend we've got it together, then the people around us will not turn to us for help. We have an entire generation not looking for perfect people, but looking for a God who can deal with imperfect people, who will love imperfect people. There are no perfect people. These lights do not give me any advantage. This pulpit does not make your pastors and teaching pastors a perfect people. Their ability to dig into the Word of God do not make them perfect people. Spiritual words do not make people perfect people. We are all imperfect people who desperately need a perfect God. If we were perfect, Jesus wouldn't have come. Do you realize what freedom that gives you? You say, to do anything I want? No, the freedom to understand that God loves you just the way you are. My marriage is not perfect. I stood in this auditorium one time. It was filled with preachers. And I said to them, I've been married for 40 years. Now, you already know I have a strange mind. But those preachers, thousands of them, stood to their feet in a standing ovation. I've been married 40 years. Whew, they stood up, clack. I've been married 40 years. I've been married 40 years. So I just let them clap, and when they got done, I said, to 7 different women. That makes preachers stop clapping. You have not lived until you watch a couple thousand preachers try to erase their applause. I actually have been married for 40 years to the same woman, and I'm going to stay with this woman until the day she dies. Neither one of us are perfect. Neither one of us are perfect. We argue. That's as silent as I've heard this group in the entire day. Can almost see people going, why'd they have him here? He and his wife argue. Yes, we argue. And I'll tell you something else. It's getting worse. Because neither one of us can hear anymore. We have entire arguments in our house with just one word. What? What? And this isn't a marriage conference, but women, please let me help you. If you want to talk to us, do not seclude yourself in some cobweb-infested closet in the basement of the house and call to us from there. Do not do it. What? I am afflicted with a disease called ADHD times 100. She has stayed with me for now almost 50 years. ADHD, I squirrel, there's squirrels everywhere for me. My family sometimes is embarrassed because I'll talk to anybody, anywhere, and then get distracted and go to something else. We stayed in a hotel the other night, worst hotel I've ever stayed in. We had to stay there because we had traveled 12 hours with 2 nasty little dogs that had to take a walk every hour. And most of the time, that's all they did was take a walk. But you gotta let them do that or they'll take a walk in your car. So you just let them take a walk. And we finally got to the hotel, and it was a horrible hotel because it took dogs. We couldn't stay in a decent hotel. It was scary. The security looked horrible. There were really mean-looking people hanging around. And I just locked the door. We crashed in bed. I woke up about an hour later. And this, by the way, you recognize that as a humorist, there are times when I exaggerate. This part is true word for word. Hour after I fell asleep, I woke up because I needed to take a walk. I took a walk to the bathroom. And on the way, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a movement. The hair on the neck, back of my neck stood up. Folks, this is true. I turned and looked. There was a man standing in our closet in his underwear. Now, I've studied self-defense, and instinctively I smashed at him and almost broke my fist on the mirror that is in our closet. That is true. Would you stay married to that guy? Talk about beating yourself up. Diane woke up and said, honey, what is it? What is it? And I said, I've taken care of it, baby. I am not married to a perfect woman. She makes me laugh with some of the things she does and says harder than any comedian alive. Strange that we went on a cruise. We're gone for almost a week. She defrosted the refrigerator and forgot a carton of milk in the refrigerator. No coolant in there, just this carton of milk. Do you know what happens to a carton of milk when you leave it in the refrigerator for a week? We came home, opened the refrigerator. First clue is the sound it makes. It just makes a poof sound as you open it. Then a wall of stink you could see came out of the refrigerator. We have those two little dogs. One of them was just laying on his side, his little leg kicking out like that. Inside of the refrigerator, covered with fungus, and the carton of milk had hair. It had hair. She grabbed the carton of milk and said, Ken, come here, smell this. She said, I think this is spoiled. I said, sweetheart, the dog is dead. Thanksgiving Day, I'm going to thank Jesus that this woman has stayed with me for 50 years. I would love to tell you that her only... Thank you. I would like to tell you that her only problem is that I have ADHD. But you see, my imperfections aren't limited to just silly little funny things that have happened in our life. She would have had every right early in our marriage to pack my suitcases, put them on the front porch, and said, you're out of here. The little arguments that we have so many times we're able to approach because of laughter, but there's some things we've had to work through that are deep, deep things. I had a man come to me after I told about my experiences, and he said, I too have been married for 40 years, he said, and my wife and I have never had an argument. No. He said, we've never even raised our voices to one another in 40 years. I began to tense up inside. And then he said, we've never even had a bad thought toward each other in 40 years. Nothing. I wanted to say, hey, you're married to a carrot. You can't be married to a human being. Friends, can I encourage you something I've learned over the years, and something that's true because of this truth of a reason for joy, that perfection isn't a requirement? A good marriage is not the absence of conflict. If you're in a marriage and there is no conflict, you need to look around. One of you has passed away. A good marriage happens when two people lean heavily on the source of joy to work through conflict together. Thanksgiving. I'm going to hold that lady in my arms and say, thank you for not insisting that I be perfect. And thank you for staying with me. I'm going to do the same thing with my Lord. You see, in the middle of my career, I wrote a book called Fully Alive that describes how in the middle of my career I almost died. And I mean almost died. Depression. What happened was I took my eyes away from the author of joy and began to look for joy in the success that I had, in the ministry that I had. In my bank account. The words whispered in my ear, "You don't have to work another day in your life," almost became my death warrant. I decided to coast to the finish line. And that is a death warrant, by the way, because the finish line began to make its way toward me. So is God done with me? Why am I here? I'll tell you why I'm here. Because the basics of the gospel is this. Romans 3:23. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Wow, there's a reason for joy, huh? Isn't that exciting? Doesn't that make you want to stand up and cheer? We all have fallen short of God's glorious, wonderful ideal. Well, let's move on because that's a bit of a downer. Romans 6. The penalty for that sin is death. Woohoo! Are we getting excited now? The greatest word in the Bible is the next word, but. The penalty of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. No perfect people. What if you're like me, like I am sometimes? What if your eyes are easily moved? It's so easily, fame, whatever it might be, that we glance away from the one who really is the source of joy. What if I'm afraid or wonder where God is in the midst of what's happening in the world today and what's happening in our country and what's happening in your family? Where is he? Where is he? What's he going to think of that? I want to tell you something, folks. Faith is not the absence of doubt. Faith is moving forward in the presence of doubt. Faith is trusting the author of joy when you know that things aren't perfect and you aren't perfect. Lamentations 3:22 and 23 says this, "Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed." We are not consumed by circumstances.